Welcome to Seis 101.
SEIS stands for Special Education Information System. SEIS is the computerized system where we create and store IEPs, individualized educational programs, and other special education data. When you are holding an IEP meeting, you will create the IEP documents in SEIS. Furthermore, SEIS allows you to look at the student's current IEP as well as prior IEPs. In this section, we will introduce some basic SEIS concepts to give you an understanding of the purpose and structure of SEIS. We will revisit these concepts as we dive into how to effectively use SEIS in your practice. SEIS is an electronic copy of the IEP. It is not a legal document. The legal document, signed by participants, is the actual paper copy. However, SEIS should be a perfectly accurate copy of the legal IEP documents. Thus, it is important to have all relevant legal documentation in SEIS, including uploads of important paper documents, such as signature pages. SEIS consists of two aspects: the IEP and related documents, and the student record. The IEP includes all IEP-related documents such as the present levels page, the goals page, the signature page, etc. After an IEP is done, these are maintained in SEIS as read-only records and cannot be edited. The student record includes special education and related data about the student. So it would include items like name, birth date, parents, disability, last completed IEP, last completed assessment, current services, and much more. When you update relevant fields in the IEP, you are updating fields in the student record. Typically, the student record should be updated through the IEP or amendment process. This provides transparency in that every change in the student record is documented. We'll talk more about amendments in the next section. SEIS divides IEPs up into three filing categories: future, current, historical. The future IEP is when you are writing a draft of an IEP for an IEP meeting coming up. The future IEP is the only one that can be edited. The current IEP is the IEP from the last meeting. The current IEP is not editable. If parent has agreed to the IEP, then this is the IEP that everyone is implementing. The historical IEP is a prior IEP, such as last year's IEP. The process works like this. You draft an IEP in the future for an upcoming meeting. After the meeting, you lock in that IEP through the affirm and attest process, and it becomes the current IEP. The prior current IEP at this point becomes an historical IEP. We will explain the affirm attest process in much greater detail later. Affirming an IEP is done after a meeting. The purpose of this is to lock in the IEP. Remember, the future IEP is editable. When affirmed, that IEP is now locked. The IEP should be affirmed as soon as possible by the case manager and no later than 7 calendar days from the meeting date. It does not matter whether or not parents have signed and consented to the IEP. Through this process, you, the case manager, are affirming this document represents what's happened on this day, that these IEP documents were discussed and considered. Again, you affirm whether or not parents have consented. By affirming, you are protecting yourself and the district because no one can go in and change the document directly after a meeting. Any changes will be done through the correction/amendment process, so they will be transparent. Rest assured, though, if there are any changes that need to be made or corrections, you can easily accomplish that through the correction/amendment process, so it will be transparent and there will be an electronic paper trail. The basic document in SEIS is an IEP. Ideally, there is only one IEP per year. There are 3 allowable types of IEPs in SEIS. The initial IEP is when a student first qualifies for special education. When an initial IEP is completed, the dates for the next plan review and the next eligibility evaluation are calculated. The plan review IEP must be held every year to develop new goals, report on progress, etc. The eligibility evaluation IEP is done every 3 years to establish whether the student is still eligible for special education services. An eligibility evaluation IEP should always be combined with a plan review. By combining the two, if the IEP needs to be amended, you will not have to hold a plan review. Remember, the sole purpose of an eligibility evaluation is to determine continued eligibility. Any changes to the IEP must come from a plan review.
Wait, what?
CDE changed the notice of an annual IEP meeting. It's now called a plan review. The triennials are now referred to as eligibility evaluations. Don't worry, it's just a name change. There are no changes to the purpose, content, or timelines. SEIS is still working on updating all the forms to have the new names. So, any legal IEP type meeting other than an initial, a plan review, or an eligibility evaluation is done through the amendment process to the current IEP. For example, if you have a meeting to change placement, you would do that through the amendment process. If you have a meeting to add a behavior improvement plan, you would do that through the amendment process. You can add or change any IEP page through the amendment process. Another important point, in SEIS, the amendment process is just a way of organizing. So when we talk about amendment process, you may not always be amending the IEP. You may be correcting a typographical error on the IEP. You may be discontinuing a service. You may be having a transition meeting. If the student is an 8th grader going to high school next year, you may be having a continuation, part 2 of an IEP meeting you did not finish. These are all done through the amendment process. Please note that there are 2 important exceptions to doing all corrections through the amendment process. If the meeting date on the IEP is incorrect, or if the meeting type is incorrect, you must correct the dates in the future. Open up a future IEP and enter the correct date and/or correct meeting type of the meeting on the information eligibility form, and then affirm. However, if you just need to change the next due dates, then you would do that through the amendment process. Although SEIS is not the legal copy of the student's IEP, it is used to report certain data to the state. Now that we have covered the concepts of SEIS, let's dive in and learn how to maneuver through the software so you can start writing IEPs. I can hardly wait!
To log in, enter the username and password provided by your district. If you forgot your password, you can click on Forgot Password. SEIS will send a link to reset the password to the email address associated with the account. Make sure you have your correct email in SEIS. Otherwise, you'll need to contact your district office for assistance. This is the SEIS dashboard. Let's start by managing your user profile. Click on your name in the upper right-hand corner of the dashboard to access Manage Profile. You should verify your work email, phone number, and cell phone number are correct. This is where you can reset your password. resetting your password is recommended the first time you log in. When resetting your password, you'll need to follow the password requirements. To display the password requirements, click on the information icon next to New Password. Be sure to click Save when you're done. To return to the dashboard, click on the Apple or the Home icon. You should never use your browser's back arrow. Local news items from both your district and SELPA are located at the top of your dashboard. SELPA often posts training opportunities and helpful tips here. For example, for all your IEP writing and content needs, look for Building a Better IEP, coming to a venue near you. Seis has a built-in notification system when you need to make a record change or add a student record. We'll cover how to make these requests shortly. Right now, we're just showing you how to view your requests and the status. By clicking on any of these categories, you will be able to review the status of your requests. Once a request has been completed, you should remove the request from your dashboard. To do this, just click on the trash can. This will only remove the notification and not have an impact on the student's record. Be sure to check with your district SEIS contact to confirm this is how they would like to be notified. Right now, I'm just showing you a feature that's available. Requests for adding or removing a student from your caseload, once completed, will populate in the Students Added Removed section on the dashboard. If you click in this section, SEIS will display those students. Again, once completed, be sure to remove the notification from your dashboard by clicking on the trash can. Keeping the status of your request current on your dashboard will make it easier for you to notice when action has been taken. Meeting alerts are located below the local news section on your dashboard. This will help you keep track of when IEP meetings are coming due. Plan reviews that are due within the next 30 days, eligibility evaluations due within the next 75 days, initial evaluations due in the next 60 days, interim placements or 30-day reviews on records that have been transferred in over the past 30 days will all populate here. The blue circle represents meetings that are coming due soon. The orange circle indicates the number of meetings that are now past due. The information to the right pertains to infant plans and not relevant to most users. By clicking on any of these categories, SEIS will redirect you to a listing of those students. You can choose to download or print the information as a PDF. It's important to note that the information is only as good as the data entry. If you're calculating dates incorrectly on the Information and Eligibility IEP form, these notifications will not be accurate. Now that we understand the SEIS dashboard, let's take a look at your caseload. There are many ways to perform the same task in SEIS. This is just one of the ways you can view your caseload. On the black navigation bar at the top, go to Students, Student IEPs. SEIS will display all students on your caseload. There are icons on both sides of the student's line of information. The icons to the left are for accessing the student record, checking for CalPADS errors, and affirming a future IEP. The icons to the right will take you to the future IEP, current IEP, and historical IEP. If you hover your cursor over any icon in SEIS, it will display what the icon represents. Let's take a quick look back at the concepts discussed at the beginning. The historical IEP is read-only. You cannot edit. The current IEP is also read-only. You can, however, create an amendment to the current IEP. Amendments can be used for meeting continuations, changes, and/or corrections. The future IEP is when you're working on the next IEP meeting. Remember, an IEP meeting in SEIS is defined as an initial, plan review, or an eligibility evaluation. Everything else should be completed through the amendment. The only exception is if the meeting date or the meeting type is incorrect. This type of correction is made in the future IEP forms and the meeting is reaffirmed. Let's go back to review your caseload. If a student needs to be added or removed, you will go to the student change form, or student add form, and complete the information. Again, check with your district SEIS person to confirm that these are the features that they're using. Each district will have its own procedures for this process. This is just what we're showing you what's available in SEIS. Now we're ready to learn how to use some of the IEP forms. We'll click on the Edit pencil, which will take us to the future IEP forms. Let's start with the Notice of Meeting. Click on the Edit pencil and complete the form. Be careful to identify what type of meeting you'll be holding. If you will be combining a plan review and an eligibility evaluation, you must check both boxes on the notice. You can use these green buttons to autofill the parents' addresses. This will copy the information from the student record in SEIS. Select the box next to any member anticipated to attend the meeting. To use the Other boxes, simply check the box next to Other and the field is now editable. Once you have completed the form, be sure to click Save. To select another form, click on Return to List, which takes you back to the future IEP forms. Next, let's review the Information and Eligibility form. Click on the Edit pencil, which will take you to the form. Enter the IEP meeting date and then check the boxes to indicate the meeting type. If you're holding an amendment meeting, you will not update these dates. Next, be sure to use the green buttons to calculate next dates and calculate last dates. SEIS will update these fields for you based on the type of meeting you have selected. This is why it's so important to make sure you are selecting the correct meeting type. Plan review IEPs must be held within 12 months. If you schedule this as an anniversary date, the meeting will be late. Eligibility evaluations are held every 3 years. Again, this is not an anniversary date. If calculated as an anniversary date, you could end up out of compliance. Notice that some of these fields have red titles. This information is reported to the state and feeds into CalPAD student on the student record in SEIS. Now we'll take a look at the goals form. You'll follow all the same steps as before. Click on Return to List, which takes you back to all the future IEP forms. Click on the Edit pencil next to Goals. To add a goal, click on the green Add Goal button. The goal description is for your use only and does not print on the IEP form. You can use this to keep track of old versus new goals. You'll number your measurable goal. Once you've completed the fields, you're ready to either create your own goal, or you can choose one from the goal bank. Let's review the services page. You'll access this the same way as the other forms we've reviewed. Special education and related services is where you'll enter the direct services a student will receive. To add a service, click on the green Add Service button and complete the information. Be sure you complete all of the fields. The state does not allow you to use the same service code more than one time on the IEP. For example, you're entering specialized academic instruction, and there are some variations on what this service will look like based on each class the student is in. You will only enter the service code one time and then enter the variations of the delivery in the comments section of the service. Now we'll review the educational settings page. Again, you will access this form the same way as the other forms we've reviewed. Complete all of the information. Remember, the fields in red are reported to the state. You are required to enter the percentage of time a student is in regular general education class for students between the ages of 5, but only if they're in kindergarten, and 22. The SELPA has a spreadsheet to help you calculate this information. It can be found by going to the Reference tab and selecting Document Library. We'll go over accessing this a little bit later. Be sure to save, and save often when working on IEP forms. Finally, this form allows you to project a change that will happen in the next school year before the student's next annual plan review. Now let's talk about how to affirm an IEP. Remember, it doesn't matter whether or not the parents have signed and consented to the IEP. Through this process, you, the case manager, are affirming this document represents what happened on this day, that these IEP documents were discussed and considered. Again, you affirm whether or not parents have consented. Once a meeting has been held, the IEP should be affirmed. Best practice is within 7 calendar days of the meeting, if not sooner. If it was an initial IEP and the student qualified, the district office will need to update the eligibility status before the meeting can be affirmed. Only case managers will have an affirm button on their screen. Students that do not qualify, the meeting is not affirmed. Instead, the plan type is changed. This too is completed at the district office. To start the affirming process, you will click on the Affirm button from any IEP form in the future. SEIS outlines the steps to follow for affirming. Step 1 is to verify each field is correct by checking the boxes next to each one, and then the green Continue Affirm button. Remember, SEIS is still updating the meeting names on all the forms. If you've missed any of the compliance fields, SEIS will let you know here so you can correct them. Once there are no errors, you will click Continue to get to the final step. The last step is to select the forms used for the meeting. Check each box next to the form. These forms will be in bold once affirmed. You can click on Preview PDF if you want to take one last look, and/or click on Submit. If you forgot to check the box next to a form, or you didn't check any of the boxes, No problem. Everything is locked in the future. Checking the boxes on the forms used makes it easier for others to know what forms were used. Let's go back to the concepts. Remember the affirm shuffle? You've just affirmed the future IEP, locking in that IEP, and it becomes the current IEP. The prior current IEP at this point becomes the historical IEP. To create an amendment from the current IEP, click on the Amendment tab and then Add Amendment. You will enter the amendment date and the purpose. If you select Other, the shaded gray box will now become editable. Enter the purpose of the meeting. This is where you can also enter notes for the meeting. The next box, Changes to the IEP, is where you will list out any changes made to any of the IEP forms. If you're making changes to any of the IEP forms, you will need to scroll down to the bottom of the page to where it asks, does this amendment require additional forms? Select Yes. By selecting Yes, all of the IEP forms from the future are now available in the amendment. Click on the Edit pencil for any form you will be making changes to. Remember, be sure to save often. When you're done with all the forms you want to make changes to, click on Return to Amendment, and affirming is accomplished in the same way as we discussed for an IEP meeting. This is done from any of the future forms. Click on Affirm, and Seis will walk you through the process. When you print an amendment, the date of the amendment will print on the top of each IEP form. You should never update the date of the meeting on the information and eligibility page to reflect the amendment date. Now let's talk about a really cool feature in Seis, bulk printing. Bulk printing allows you to bulk print one IEP page for an entire group of students. Go to Searches, New Search. Check the box next to each student who you would like to be included in the bulk print action. If you don't check any of the boxes, this function will default to all records. Use the drop-down arrow from the print box and select Bulk Print IEP Forms, and then Go. Use the drop-down arrow to select the IEP form you would like to print and title your print job. Titling the print job is optional. You can bulk print IEP at a glance, progress reports, the service page, and more. Once you've selected what IEP form you want to bulk print, click on Submit Print Job. Once the print request is completed, click on the printer icon in the upper right-hand side of your dashboard, and then you'll click on the link for your print job. Helpful resources can be found under the Reference tab. And selecting Document Library. The Document Library contains all kinds of forms and tools. This is where you can find the percent and regular class calculator, documents for parents, consent to release and exchange information, prior written notice, and much more. You can type in a keyword and click Search, or click on any of the tabs and the document list will display. All you have to do is click on the form and it will automatically download to your computer. It's that easy. Last, Be sure to utilize the Help Center. You can access frequently asked questions, training materials, and training videos prepared by Seis. Seis also has a link at the bottom of the page if you want to follow them on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. Thanks for watching Seis 101, and be sure to check out Sonoma County SELPA and Sonoma County Charter SELPA websites for more resources and our training schedule.